Welcome into the Steelers Talk live show here on Tomlin Tuesday. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. We got a bunch of great stuff coming your way here over the next hour or so. We got a lot of content to get to in a short period of time. First up, Tomlin Tuesday news and rumors. There's some new rumblings that Mike Tomlin could potentially get traded at the end of this season. I'll talk about the latest rumor at the top of that. Also, we got the latest Steelers injury updates and more from Mike Tomlin as he hit the podium in Southside Pittsburgh today for his weekly press conference. Then we got some potential Mike Tomlin replacements, okay? So we're going to look at my list of the guys that I would like the most to replace Mike Tomlin if the team moves on from him. Then we've got 5 things the Pittsburgh Steelers need to fix down the stretch if they want to become legitimate to become a legitimate, dangerous team in the AFC. Come playoff time, plus 5 reasons to hope why that could actually happen. And then I'm going to be answering your questions on the Steelers Talk Week 13 mailbag, where you guys have a chance to get your question on this week's show. So if you guys want to get a question on the show for free today, you guys can use hashtag Steelers down there in the live chat. The real ones know what to do. If you have a question that you want to get on the show and you want me to answer, you guys can put hashtag Steelers and then put your question in after that and then send your comment. Or you guys can super chat on today's show. We'll put up every single super chat that comes in on screen, and we'll make sure every single question that comes in on a super chat will be on the mailbag this week. So if you guys want to donate to the show, we greatly appreciate it. It's not required by any stretch of the imagination. All we care about is that you want to talk some Steelers football with us today. But if you guys have a question, you really want to get it on the show today, even just a $2 donation will make sure and guarantee your question gets on the mailbag in about 45 minutes or so, depending on when we get through our first 4 segments. So I want to see who is in the chat. We got 232 people watching live, including my lovely fiance, Cassie Voth, who's here every single live show. We got Gary Frank in the chat. We got Mike Nintendo Master. What's up, man? Says, is it time to consider a coaching change? I think that my philosophy on it, Mike, and, my philosophy on this Tomlin situation in general is I'm going to let the season play out, all right? I'm not making any sweeping declarations at this point in the season. For all we know, the Steelers are going to finish the season 5-1 and go on a good playoff run at this point. Now, obviously, a lot of things are going to have to go right for that to come to fruition here, but I still think that this Steelers team has a lot of talent on it, and we've seen both sides of the ball, offense and defense, play at a high level at different points during this season. It's just about putting those puzzle pieces together at the right time. There's still time for the Steelers to play their best ball when it matters most here over the final month and a half of the NFL schedule. But if this team underwhelms, if they continue to play inconsistent football, and maybe they miss the playoffs, I think it's certainly going to be time to consider maybe trading Mike Tomlin if he's open to that idea going into next offseason. So I'm not going to waste your guys' time any longer here. We're going to get into the show today. Our first segment of the day, Tomlin Tuesday News and Rumors, is our first segment of the day. Lots to talk about on today's show as we get ready for this weekend's matchup versus the Buffalo Bills. So without further ado, let's get into it. Could the Pittsburgh Steelers consider trading head coach Mike Tomlin to the Tennessee Titans next offseason? I'm going to talk about that possibility at the top of today's edition of Steelers Talk. Also, we got the latest Steelers injury updates from Mike Tomlin in his weekly press conference. And then also in that press conference, Coach T made a stunning admission that you are not going to want to miss. I'm going to discuss that at the end of today's show, so make sure you guys stick around to the end of today's program. But before we get into the content today, make sure you give me a follow on X at Jack_Sperry. If you guys want my instant reactions to Steelers news items, injury updates, trade rumors, all that stuff, I put my instant reactions to that kind of stuff on my X account, as well as our film analysis that we do. I put up on X because we can't put it up here on YouTube. So if you guys want my weekly film analysis as well as my instant reactions to Steelers news items before I get a video out here on Steelers Talk, give me a follow at Jack_Sperry. I greatly appreciate all of your guys' support. All right, so we'll start here with a quote-unquote report from Josina Anderson earlier today saying, meanwhile, there is a longtime NFL head coach out there who is considering wanting a change of scenery and has told others of these thoughts. If he acts on those lingering feelings, his departure would clearly add to the list of vacancies. And Josina does have connections to the Steelers organization, and in particular, Mike Tomlin. Tomlin. She's certainly laid down some hints like this last offseason. She said, oh, there's going to be some interesting changes made in Pittsburgh. You trade George Pickens, bring in DK Metcalf, you bring in Aaron Rodgers. Certainly, it seems like Josina had the inside scoop on all that stuff before it actually happened. And some are speculating that the mystery coach that Josina is talking about is Coach Tomlin because of her connections to the Tomlin team. And now I will want to keep you guys, you guys want to keep this in mind here, that if Tomlin does end up leaving this offseason, it'll likely be in a trade. I highly doubt the Pittsburgh Steelers want to pick up the rest of the money on Mike Tomlin's contract, and a trade would be something that would be possible because you can get that money off your books, and you can get some draft capital in return for Mike Tomlin. So if Tomlin leaves, I think it'll likely be a trade so that the team can kind of keep their, we've never fired a head coach in team history, kind of thing. And when it comes to trading a head coach, guys, especially one of the caliber of Mike Tomlin, usually the price tag is at least a first-round pick. And in the case of Sean Payton, who's kind of at a similar caliber of head coach in terms of the accomplishments that Payton has had in comparison to Mike Tomlin. In fact, Mike Tomlin actually has a better winning percentage in his career to Sean Payton. Sean Payton got a first-round pick and a second-round pick in a trade. Certainly if the Pittsburgh Steelers want to move on, I think that they can get a pretty decent haul of draft picks in exchange for Coach T's services. But something else to keep in mind when it comes to the situation, guys, is that Mike Tomlin will also need to agree to go to any team that he gets traded to. He does have a no-trade clause on his current contract, so it's not like the Steelers can just trade him to a terrible football team and he has nothing to say about it. He would have to hand-pick the team that he would want to go to, and then the Steelers and that team would have to hash out a deal in terms of trade compensation. Now, the teams that have already fired their head coaches, and we already know that they have job openings right now, are the Tennessee Titans and the New York Football Giants. So those are the two teams that for sure will be looking for new head coaches next offseason. Then there's a bunch of other teams that could consider it as well. The Miami Dolphins are certainly a team that a lot of people are speculating could move on from their current head coach, Mike McDaniel. The New York Jets, even though it's just been 1 year with Aaron Glenn, could certainly move on from him. It's been a disaster season in New York. Then the Cleveland Browns and Cincinnati Bengals. Those aren't really realistic trade options for the Steelers and Mike Tomlin. There's no way they trade Tomlin to a division rival. But the Las Vegas Raiders, Pete Carroll's old, and that's been a disaster season in Vegas. I'm guessing they could be looking for a new head coach. Atlanta, Raheem Morris has not done a great job there this season. Dave Canales and the Carolina Panthers, it's been multiple years now, and they're still not great. And then same thing goes for Jonathan Gannon with the Arizona Cardinals. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how many of these jobs open up. But out of all these options, out of all 10 of those options, if I'm Coach Tomlin, out of the realistic ones that I could choose from, I think the one that I would choose is the Tennessee Titans. And, the Titans are certainly an organization that I think would be willing to give up quite a bit in draft capital to get some stability at the head coaching position. And if there's anything that Mike Tomlin is known for, it is stability. I mean, you don't go 18 straight consecutive non-losing seasons without having a very stable winning culture at the head coaching position. But I think that when you are Mike Tomlin, or whether you're Jim Harbaugh, or whether you're Ben Johnson, or whenever you're a big-time head coaching candidate, the number one thing that you look at in terms of trying to pick a new team is the quarterback situation. And out of the 8 teams that could realistically trade for Mike Tomlin this offseason, the 3 top ones for sure are Cam Ward of the Titans, Jackson Dart with the New York Giants. Both of those guys are on rookie contracts. They've shown some good things in their rookie years. They got multiple years of cost control on their rookie deals. And then the Jets, because they have a very early draft pick next year, maybe Tomlin wants to draft his quarterback of choosing. Maybe that would be his preferred option there. But other guys like Tua Tagovailoa on a massive contract, Geno Smith, Michael Penix Jr., Bryce Young, Kyler Murray, all those guys have very questionable futures with their teams. I'm not sure if Tomlin would want to go to any of those franchises because they don't have a solid answer at the quarterback position long term. Plus, Tennessee will have a very high draft pick again next year. So not only do they have the quarterback of the future there in Cam Ward, who has shown some really good things for the Titans this season. But they also have another very high draft pick. So, Tomlin could kind of drive the ship in how the team could use that draft pick. And they also have some established talent there already. Jeffrey Simmons is one of the premier interior pass rushers in the league. T'Vondre Sweat, one of the premier run stuffers at nose tackle. They have a good young receiver in Alec Iamaner. Calvin Ridley's a good veteran wide receiver and a speed threat. I really like Kevin Winston Jr., one of their rookie safeties out of Penn State. Really like his profile. Peter Skoronski's still a young offensive line piece. Lloyd Cushenberry's been known as a really good center throughout his career. They got a decent pair of backs. And then Cedric Gray, a second-year linebacker out of UNC, has really come onto the scene this year. Nobody really watches the Titans, so they don't know anything about Cedric Gray, but he's actually played pretty darn well this year. And then the Titans also have a new stadium on the way in Nashville. So Mike Tomlin, you look at this, kind of situation. You got a fan base that craves stability and would pretty much make him a god if they went 9-8 their first year. Cam Ward, you've got a quarterback of the future on a rookie deal with multiple years of cost control. You've got a really high draft pick, if not the number one overall draft pick at your disposal at season's end, heading into the 2026 NFL draft. And you got all these new facilities that you're going to be able to enjoy in years to come. So if I'm Mike Tomlin, I'm looking at all those options in terms of teams I'd like to be traded to. I think Tennessee might be at the top of my list. But in the end, guys, I do still expect Mike Tomlin to be back in Pittsburgh next year. I just don't think the Rooney family is going to want to move on. They're very proud of the fact that they've never fired a head coach, and like it or not, Mike Tomlin likely is a future Hall of Fame head coach, and they still owe him a lot of money, so they're not going to just straight up fire him because he is a good head coach, and you don't want to pay millions of dollars to a good head coach to coach against you and bring in somebody else. But the more Pittsburgh flounders, and if this season gets worse and worse as the season goes down, goes down the home stretch, there's going to be more and more smoke surrounding a potential trade surrounding Mike Tomlin. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. All right, this is pretty much the same exact deal that the Broncos gave to the Saints for Sean Payton, only you flip the years because likely the Titans wouldn't give up the first overall pick to the Steelers in 2026. We're making it a second-round pick in 2026 and then the first-round pick for the Titans in 2027 in exchange for Mike Tomlin. Are you accepting this trade? Give me an A for accept or D for decline. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. So in just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our friends at Prize Picks. While I tell you about our sponsor today, let me know A for accept or D for decline. And with that, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Prize Picks. And guys, it is the holiday season, and in my opinion, this is the best time of the year for watching sports. Whether that means bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes, it's all happening at once, and while all that action is going on, there is just one place where it feels good to be right, and that is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is super simple to play. Just pick more than or less than on at least 2 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. My favorite feature about Prize Picks is that how I play is up to me. If I want a little flexibility, I can choose the flex play where I can get paid even if one of my picks misses. But if I'm feeling really strong about my lineup and want a bigger payout for getting it right, I go for the power play. So no matter how you play, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test and make some money. That is if you know ball. So our lineup this week, Ponzi and I's lineup for Steelers versus Bills here in Week 13. I'm taking the more on touchdowns for DK Metcalf. I just have to get one touchdown there to hit on that one. Then I'm going to take the more on Josh Allen. Passing yards. Obviously, the Steelers' passing defense hasn't been fantastic this year, and Josh Allen is an elite-level quarterback. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on the Prize Picks app today. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. So now back to business here in terms of the 2025 season, where Mike Tomlin, took the podium today for Tomlin Tuesday, and he gave us some updates on the injury front, and then also had a pretty stunning admission here that we are going to get to in just a second. But first, the injury updates. He did say that Broderick Jones, the starting left tackle, and Derek Harmon, the rookie defensive tackle, will both be out this week. Broderick Jones is dealing with a neck stinger, and then Derek Harmon got a knee injury in the game last week against the Bears. He finished the game, but apparently it got so bad after the fact that he's going to have to be out this week. And really the Derek Harmon injury concerns me because you're already down Daniel Ekuale, who is one of your better run defenders. And, Harmon has really had to take on the role of the bigger body run defender type in this defense alongside Cam Hayward and Keanu Benton. And he's done a really good job of it. And you guys remember how bad the Steelers' rushing defense was the first 2 weeks of the year against the Jets and the Seahawks when, Derek Harmon was still dealing with his knee injury that he suffered in the preseason. So Y.A. Black, the massive nose tackle out of Iowa, is really going to have to step up big time this week and maybe even in future weeks. Now, we've seen some good play from Y.A. He had a big forced fumble and recovery, ripped it away from the Bears running back last week to get a big-time turnover for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And obviously, he's a big, hulking human being with a lot of man strength. So hopefully he's going to be able to do a good job in rotation and kind of step into almost a pseudo starting role and into the starting rotation for this defense. Now, two guys that are likely to return to the starting lineup this week against the Bills, Aaron Rodgers. I believe the wording that Mike Tomlin used was that he was extremely optimistic about Aaron Rodgers' chances of playing. Rodgers apparently pushed to play last week, but the Steelers team doctors wanted to give him a week to rest and get right. And then Alex Highsmith, who's been dealing with a pec injury the last couple of weeks, is expected to be back this week as well. Then three guys that will be limited to start the week, and Tomlin made it seem like they were a little bit more questionable heading into this week. Joey Porter Jr., who left Sunday's game with a hip injury, a hip flexor injury, so hopefully he can get out there and be able to play because he is this team's number one corner. DK Metcalf actually dealing with an ankle injury, not a knee there. No, sorry for the typo there, but DK Metcalf is dealing with an ankle injury, and he was able to finish the game, which tells me he's probably going to play, but he's going to be limited to start the week. And then Ben Skoranek, who did a really great job blocking for the Steelers' run game this past week. He's dealing with a shoulder injury, and he will start the week limited in practice. So with Joey Porter Jr., kind of dealing with this hip flexor injury, who knows if he's actually going to be able to play. JPJ can't go. Could this be the week that the Pittsburgh Steelers elevate Asante Samuel Jr. from the practice squad? Mike Tomlin was asked about this during his press conference today. This is what he had to say. We're always open to our practice squad guys as elevating particularly those with the resume like Samuel's. So he's only been here a short period of time. He's working his tail off to not only get in football conditioning, but learn what to do. So we'll see on the Asante Samuel Jr. front. If Porter can't go, I would certainly think about elevating Asante Samuel Jr. this week if I and head coach Mike Tomlin. But Tomlin did also make a stunning admission during his press conference today as well, which is that, he suggested that he and the Steelers coaching staff, especially on the offensive side of the ball, are now considering targeting the middle of the field more. Now, we actually did a whole video on this earlier this week. You guys can check it out. I think this is Mike Tomlin's biggest flaw, is that he kind of orders his offense and his passing offense to not target the middle of the field. But he was asked about it directly today, and it sounds like he's open to doing some things differently down the stretch. Tomlin said, quote, "It's week to week depending on the schematics of the team or the teams we compete against. Choose to deploy, but certainly largely if you look at the large body of work, there's probably some more opportunities for us in the interior portions of the field." So hopefully that's the start of Mike Tomlin kind of realizing that not targeting the middle of the field, both intermediate and deep, certainly puts a limit and puts kind of a ceiling on this Steelers passing attack. If defenses know you don't target a certain area of the field, they're going to take away the areas of the field that you actually do target. It's just the way that it works. And if you kind of threaten the middle of the field and you make the defense respect that, that's going to open up the sidelines. It's going to open up the underneath stuff that the Pittsburgh Steelers like to run. So I think that this is a big step that the Steelers offense can take forward. And if they can make that step, I legitimately think this team can be dangerous down the stretch. But I guess we're just going to have to see if they're going to be able to do that. The things I saw from Arthur Smith in terms of his offensive game planning last week, specifically in the second half, were very encouraging. There were multiple in-breakers. They ran twin double cross, which is one of my favorite deep concepts. They ran slot cross with DK Metcalf running deep crosses quite a bit. He was open multiple times. It's just Mason Rudolph just never threw the ball over the middle of the field when there were open receivers there. He always opted to go towards the sideline. So it wasn't even necessarily that the Steelers didn't have anybody over the middle of the field that was open. They did. It was that the quarterback, Mason Rudolph, maybe it's the Tomlin programming, during his many years in Pittsburgh, but he just didn't want to throw the ball over the middle of the field. And I'm hoping with Aaron Rodgers getting back into the lineup this week, we're going to see this Steelers offense attack the middle of the field more, because I really think it could be the missing piece to the Steelers offense heading down the stretch. And if they can actually make that a part of their offensive attack, not only do I think, you add another element there, but it also makes the other elements of your offense, all right, attacking outside the numbers, underneath your run game. It's going to make those elements of your offense even better, because teams are going to have to allocate resources elsewhere, opening up more space and opportunities to those other areas of the field. So I guess we'll just have to see if Mike Tomlin's word there is good and we actually see this offense target the middle of the field more in recent weeks. But predict it for me down there in the comment section. Will Pittsburgh's passing offense turn it around before the end of the season? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. For me, I have hope, but definitely cautious optimism at this point that they could turn things around. But let me know your answer, yes or no, down there in the comments. That'll be it for today's edition of Steelers News and Rumors. We're going to continue to get you guys Steelers coverage all throughout this week. So make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers. First segment in the books. We're going to get into our second segment here pretty darn soon, but you guys can get your questions in to be put on the Steelers Talk mailbag by using hashtag Steelers down there in the live chat room. You guys can be like Mike Nintendo Mester, who says, is it time to consider a coaching change? We answered that earlier in the show, but I don't think the Steelers are going to do it, but I think if you don't make the playoffs, you should at least consider it. If somebody's offering you what the Broncos, gave up for Sean Payton, you have to think about it, man. Like, I'm sorry. A first-round pick and a second-round pick, adding those two picks could be huge, and there's a lot of really good head coaching candidates out there, and we're going to talk about them here in our next segment. I've got my entire list of Mike Tomlin replacements that I would be good with heading into the 2026 campaign, if that is the Pittsburgh Steelers move on from him. So if you guys have a question, make sure you guys use hashtag Steelers down there in the chat, or you can super chat to get on the show, guaranteed. It doesn't matter if it's $2 donation, $5 donation, $10 donation, $20, $50, $100, doesn't matter. If you guys donate to the show, we're going to put you up on screen. We're going to answer your question. We're going to give you guys some love. So we greatly appreciate all of your guys' support. And now we do have some super chats to catch up on here before we get into our next segment. Interstellar Reaper says, do you think Notre Dame's head coach Marcus Freeman could replace Tomlin as head coach, or will the Steelers hire someone inside the organization? I don't like the idea of hiring somebody from college, and here's why. The rules of the game are completely different, all right? The hash marks are way wider, which allows for more RPOs, and not only that, but the RPO game is completely different in college because offensive linemen are actually allowed to go further than in the NFL. In the NFL, you can only go 1 yard, right? So in college, you got a little bit more than that. So, I think that Freeman probably doesn't have enough connections to high-quality coaches in the National Football League ranks, and because of that, I don't think he would make a great NFL head coach. Now, if he wants to transition to the pro game and be an assistant and learn the game and build connections and do that sort of thing, then sure, I think that he's a good team builder. I think he's a good leader of men. But, it's more than that in the National Football League. It's building a good staff. It's getting good coordinators. It's getting good positional coaches. And it's about, strategic brilliance at the National Football League level, because the level of talent across the league is so razor thin that you have to find your winning edge schematically. And I just don't know if Freeman has the connections in the league to be able to do that. And by the way, that goes for other college coaches as well. Dan Lanning from Oregon and others. I'm not a big fan of bringing somebody from the college ranks over to the National Football League. Just look at how it worked for Matt Rule in Carolina. It was a complete disaster, right? So for me personally, I am somebody that wants to get somebody with NFL experience and has experience with NFL schematics because that's really what matters at the end of the day. $2 from Sauce and Sports says, I'll accept the trades if there is a third for 2026. Listen, man, a first and a second round pick is a lot for a head coach. It really is. It's a lot for anything. And honestly, I brought this up to our office here at Chat Sports, and everybody thinks I'm crazy for asking for a first and a second round pick, even though that's exactly what the Broncos gave up for Sean Payton. All right, the Buccaneers traded a first round pick all the way back in the early 2000s for John Gruden. All right, good coaches with a Super Bowl under their belt that are going to be future Hall of Famers like Mike Tomlin is, they are worth at least a first-round pick, period. Okay, so if the Steelers can't get that, they should probably just bring him back for another season. That's probably what they should do. $5 from Shannon Cassidy says Bills signed Brandon Cooks, but don't worry, thankfully the Steelers signed Cornell Powell to the practice squad. Listen, man, Brandon Cooks wouldn't have helped this team, in my opinion. He doesn't have any speed left. He can run some routes and he can catch, some passes underneath, but like, he's not going to unlock the vertical passing game for the Pittsburgh Steelers, guys. And frankly, I think they already have the guys in-house to be able to do that. We saw Calvin Austin III do some really good things this past week. He was this team's best receiver last week, in my opinion. That includes DK Metcalf, at least in terms of the production that he had. I mean, not only did he lead the team in receiving yards, but he also caused a really big DPI down the field, beating his guy down on a go ball. So Calvin is somebody that's really good out in space. He's really fast. He's a really good route runner, and he showed some good things. If they can just tailor this offense to target the middle of the field more, I think Calvin and frankly Roman Wilson can do some better things. I don't know if they're going to be the long-term solution at number 2 and number 3 receiver. Honestly, they probably aren't. But, you got to make do with what you have. And the one thing the Steelers do have in the wide receiver room is speed. So I think they need to do a better job using that speed in the weeks to come. Steelers Dad with a 10. Good to see you, Steelers Dad. I haven't seen you in a little while. I hope you're doing good health-wise, my friend. Says, just wanted to say how much I appreciate your coverage. There's literally no other source of Steelers content like Chat Sports. I appreciate that, Steelers Dad. You've always been a real one, man. Listen, man, you can ask Cassie. I live, breathe, drink, sleep Steelers. I am up. I was up until 2 in the morning scripting our AM video today, guys, and I got up at 8 to go to work. So, I literally spend my life trying to get you guys the best damn Steelers coverage I can possibly give you. So I greatly appreciate your appreciation. There's Steelers Dad. All right, so let's get into our next segment here, guys. Keep those super chats coming. We'll get every single super chat up on the show eventually, and every single super chat will make it onto the mailbag. But we got another segment for you guys. It's another fun one. Some more Mike Tomlin kind of speculation here. This time, talking about the top guys that I would want to bring in as the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're diving into it right now. Today on Steelers Talk, we're going to be talking about my list and my preferred options for the Pittsburgh Steelers to be their next head coach. That is if the Rooney family and the Pittsburgh Steelers decide to move on from head coach Mike Tomlin at the end of the 2025 NFL season. Now, before we get into my list today and the top guys that I would consider if I were the Pittsburgh Steelers, kick us off down there in the comments section by letting me know the percent chance that Coach Tomlin is back next season. So put it on a scale of 0, meaning no chance he's back, he's getting fired, he's getting traded, no chance he's back next year, to 100%, meaning he is definitely coming back, no chance he gets traded, no chance he gets fired, no chance he retires. He will be back in 2026. Let me know what your answer is down there in the comments section. And let's get into it, man. Now, before I start with the candidates here, I do think Mike Tomlin will be back in 2026, or at least I think that's the most likely scenario. I still think the Steelers are going to finish with at least a winning record this year, and potentially getting to that 10-win mark, and maybe make the playoffs and maybe even win a playoff game. And if they make the playoffs again this year, guys, and they get another 10-win season, he's not going to get fired, plain and simply, unless he retires or steps away from the team. The team's not going to let him go. Even if a team is offering like a haul of draft picks, they're not going to let him go. If you're going to replace Mike Tomlin, and I see this a lot on Steelers Twitter, like, oh, if you want to fire Tomlin, who are you going to bring in instead? Well, here's my criteria that I would want. If the Steelers are going to replace Mike Tomlin with somebody, I want these 3 things. Number 1, I want a charismatic leader of men, all right? Mike Tomlin is one of the most charismatic people in all of sports, which is why his players will go to bat for him time and time and time again. It's why players every single year when they poll which coach you want to play for the most that you haven't played for yet, every single time it's Mike Tomlin. All right, the players love him. They love the motivation that he brings to the locker room, into the meeting room every single week and every single season. If there's anybody whose voice never gets stale in a locker room, it is Mike Tomlin's, okay? Also, I want somebody that is capable of building an excellent staff. I mean, I think that this element of head coach decisions goes completely underrated. I mean, it's not just the head coach, guys. They got to put themselves and surround themselves with really good people. And honestly, this has been one of the downfalls of Mike Tomlin as a head coach here in Pittsburgh, is that he has surrounded himself and has chosen to hire people that are incompetent. Certainly if you're going to replace him, I want somebody that can build an excellent staff. And then the final thing that I want somebody that's an innovative mind on his side of the ball. So whether that's an offensive-minded guy, whether that's a defensive-minded guy, I want somebody that not only can command the respect of the locker room, not only can build a great staff, but can also, mentally speaking and schematically hold their own on their side of the ball with the best of them in the league, okay? And for me, there are only 3 candidates out there right now that, quote-unquote, have all of it. All right. Now, there's a lot of candidates that have 2 of these things or 1 of these things, and those guys would be perfectly fine. But in terms of finding really, really ideal candidates for this team, I think it boils down to 3 guys at least, in my opinion. Now, the first one that we'll talk about today is somebody that I've already discussed on the channel, and that is Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores. And, this one really harkens back to when the Steelers did hire Mike Tomlin, right? Because Tomlin, before getting hired as the Steelers head coach, was the Vikings defensive coordinator. So that kind of harkens back to that. Also, Flores, spent a year here in Pittsburgh learning, the quote-unquote Steeler way. He's got that instant credibility inside the Steelers locker room already because TJ Watt already knows what flow's about. All right, Cam Hayward already knows what he's about. All these guys, Joey Porter Jr., right? All these guys that played that season with Brian Flores here in Pittsburgh, they know what he's about, and the leadership will have his back 100%. Not only that, but he's a big personality, and he has a bunch of charisma, all right? He's somebody that can command a room. He's somebody that, it just doesn't matter where he's at. New England, Miami, Minnesota, people talk about his personality, how he's a player's type of guy, and he's a guy that players want to play for. Also, he's an absolute defensive mastermind, man. Like the way that he uses palms and quarters and covers zero and the sim pressure looks that he sends, like he is an absolute mastermind, guys. And if you're looking for that modern NFL defense, that's what Brian Flores would bring as the defensive play caller here in Pittsburgh. And then also he's got ideal offensive coordinator connections as well. I mean, he's in Minnesota right now, and he could pluck the next hotshot Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay disciple right out of the Minnesota ranks. And it could even be like a guy like Josh McCown, for example, who has been highly coveted for offensive coordinator positions. So I think that Flores brings it all. Now, you might be saying at home, but Jack, he failed in Miami, and apparently he bullied Tua Tagovailoa and all this different stuff. Can he really develop a young quarterback? Because that's going to be a big part of the job of the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers if they move off of Mike Tomlin. And I think the answer to the question is yes. Not only is the offensive coordinator that he brings over from the McVay, Kevin O'Connell tree going to be in charge of a lot of that development for that young quarterback, but also I think Brian Flores has softened a little bit and has become more of a players-focused coach instead of the Belichickian tyrant type of coach that he came into Miami with. Because before he went to Miami, he spent like 12 years in New England under Bill Belichick's thumb, and that's all he knew about NFL coaching, all right? Like, that's the only style of coaching that he was aware of, was to completely tyrannize your team and your coaching staff the way Belichick did in New England for many years. But now he spent a year in Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin and KOC for many years in Minnesota, who do things a lot differently, man. They respect their players. They treat them as, co-workers and partners in crime there instead of, underlings. And I think that has been really good for Brian Flores' development as a leader, as a person. And I think he would crush it as a leader of a new NFL franchise. And I also think that he did a pretty decent job in Miami. Now, was he perfect? No, but at least in his, and according to his testimony in his lawsuit against the National Football League right now, he accuses Stephen Ross, the owner of the Miami Dolphins, of asking him to tank, and that probably means that the GM there, Chris Greer, was actively tanking during that time, and he took those practice squad level defenses and turned them into top 10 units. Like Brian Flores, took lemons and turned them into lemonade there in Miami, and was very competitive throughout his time in South Beach. So coming up here, got two other potential head coaching hires that I would be absolutely thrilled with if I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and I am. But before we get into all that, guys, let me know your answer to this question down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. Who would you like the Steelers to replace Mike Tomlin with next year if they move off of Coach T? This will be the pinned comment on today's show. Just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our new sponsor today at Cash App. And while I tell you about our new sponsor today, get down there in the comment section and let me know who you want to be the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Here on Steelers Talk, we are thrilled to be partnering with our new sponsor here on the show, Cash App. And the holidays are all about finding the perfect gift, but this time of the year, not every deal is actually what it seems. Scammers are getting more creative to trick people into sharing their payment info through methods like fake shopping sites and giveaways that are too good to be true. Luckily, Cash App's 24/7 fraud monitoring helps detect and alert you for unusual card activity if someone were to gain access to your card, so you can act fast if something seems off. You can also lock or unlock your Cash App card instantly right in the app for extra control and peace of mind. Stay one step ahead of scams this season and keep your money secure with Cash App. For limited time only, new Cash App customers can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash. For real, just download Cash App, use our exclusive referral code, SECURE10 in your profile. Send $5 to a friend within 14 days, and you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partners. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank. Member FDIC. Promotions provided by Cash App, a Block Inc. brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures. And a big thank you to Cash App for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. The second head coaching candidate for the Pittsburgh Steelers that I would consider a Tier 1 guy, and I got 3 of them today, by the way, is Robert Saleh, the 49ers defensive coordinator. Now, this is another guy that failed in a previous regime in the AFC East with the New York Jets, and rather recently, but, I think that, in terms of the 3 things that I want, Robert Saleh brings that to the table. I think he is a very charismatic, high-energy leader that could step into Mike Tomlin's shoes and, certainly could fill that role as that guy that can, juice people up in meetings and all that different stuff and lead the guys into battle. Also, I think he's a very great modern defensive mind. He runs a lot of that too high safety stuff, but he also does a lot of modern blitz looks, and he gets very creative. I mean, look at what he's doing in San Francisco this year, guys. Like losing Nick Bosa, maybe the best player on his team, then losing Fred Warner, the other best player on his team. They're still playing great football, man. So he can certainly get lemons, turn it into lemonade, do all that stuff. Can take injuries and still get production out of his guys. But also he's got connections to high-end OC candidates as well, man. Like he comes from San Francisco there, obviously, and he's certainly got some connections to those people in the 49ers building, including some people that formerly was in the 49ers building there with Mike McDaniel, who might be available to be an offensive coordinator for some team next year. And in terms of just pure offensive play calling, there's very few people in the league that are better than McDaniel. And the fact that Saleh has that connection to McDaniel, I think that he would be maybe the most ideal offensive coordinator candidate for the Pittsburgh Steelers out of any head coach that could be brought in here outside of just hiring a straight-up offensive coordinator to be your next head coach. If you're going to go with a defensive guy, you got to have somebody with connections to an excellent coaching tree on the offensive side of the ball. Mike McDaniel completely changed the career of Tua Tagovailoa, got him paid a crap ton of money. I would trust him with the development of the next franchise quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers 100%. Now, this one, I'm going to go a little bit off the deep end here, man, but I think it actually would work. I'm going to go with Nick Saban as my third Tier 1 candidate here, the former Alabama head coach. Now, obviously, he would have to agree to come out of retirement. Obviously, he's got a pretty cushy job there at ESPN and all that stuff. But listen, man, he's got so much going for him. Instant credibility inside Pittsburgh's locker room, because of his connection to Belichick. And then, of course, his track record in college football. He's the greatest head coach in college football history. He's got a legendarily high organizational standard as well. well. Just go watch any of his motivational speeches if you disagree with me on that. Most people talk about how great of an organization Nick Saban runs, and he holds people to an extremely high standard, which I want here in Pittsburgh. Also, an extensive staff would be certainly built here in Pittsburgh under Nick Saban. He's got so many connections because the staff turnover was so high there at Alabama. He had to bring in new people almost every single year. So there are coaches in every single coaching staff in the National Football League that he has connections to, and he'd be able to maybe build the best coaching staff in the entire National Football League here in Pittsburgh. Also, a bunch of these players that played for Alabama that are currently played under Nick Saban, might love to play for him again. So he would be really good for in terms of free agency for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then obviously his man-match defensive system that he ran in the league, and then also at Alabama for all those years, has helped modernize NFL defenses. So it's certainly a defense that can work here in Pittsburgh. And then, Brian Daboll would be my ideal offensive coordinator under a Nick Saban hire here. He worked under him at Alabama. Of course, Daboll is now free to work for whoever he chooses after he got fired from the New York Football Giants. Obviously, he helped develop Josh Allen into the quarterback that he currently is today. So I love his system. Jackson Dart looks like a legitimate franchise quarterback in just his rookie season there in New York. Brian Daboll knows how to work with young quarterbacks. He's also been a coordinator in college, so he knows how to make that transition for these young guys from college to the pros. He's coached in both, so he understands not only how to attack NFL defenses, but understands the transition and what helps these young quarterbacks transition easily to the National Football League. So I think that would be a perfect hire as the next OC of this team. And according to Colin Cowherd in a report that he had back in July, he said it's quote-unquote the worst-kept secret in the league that Saban would take a call from the NFL if he had a top 10 pick. Now, maybe the Steelers won't have a top 10 draft pick, but what that report tells me is that if the right situation comes up, then Nick Saban would take the call, and he would potentially decide to jump to the National Football League. And by the way, Nick Saban grew up a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan. He grew up in West Virginia. He recently talked about this when College Game Day was at Acrisure Stadium. And he talked about how he was a giant Steelers fan growing up. How great of a final act of a coaching career would it be to coach his longtime team that he's been a fan of for years. And, in short, Saban, might come back for the right fit. And, maybe because he's such a big fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he has been since he was a kid, maybe this would be the dream job for him. And with all the connections that he has in the league, both player-wise and coaching-wise, with the great leadership that he brings to the table and the organizational standards, obviously he would have to agree to come out of retirement. But out of all the teams that he could come out of retirement for, I think the Steelers might be on that short list of teams that he might consider it for. So take your pick for me down there in the comments section. Between these three options, which one would you like to hire as the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers? Type BF for Brian Flores, type RS for Robert Saleh, or NS for Nick Saban. Honestly, I would be thrilled with any of these guys. I think they're all excellent candidates, guys, but let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Now, we'll kind of rattle off some more names that are kind of more NFL-centric here. We'll start with my second tier of guys, and I kind of split my second tier up into two separate areas. So my second tier, my first portion here is fun new hires. So these are younger guys that haven't had chances to be head coaches in the league before, but they're doing a great job right now around the league. That includes Clint Kubiak, who is currently coordinating the most explosive offense in the league there in Seattle. Chris Shula, the Rams defensive coordinator, doing a phenomenal job with a really young defense in LA. And then Jeff Hafley's done a really good job on his 2 years in Green Bay, and he's getting a lot of buzz to be a head coach somewhere this upcoming season. Now, the only thing about these guys is that, I'm not sure if they have the leadership chops, all right? Like, they're younger guys. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to step into Mike Tomlin's meeting room and be able to command the respect of the players the same way that Tomlin does. So, if I interview these guys and, they're certainly bringing the juice, and I think that they can command the respect of the players in the locker room, by all means, hire these guys. I think that they're really brilliant minds on their respective sides of the football, and I'd love to hire any of them as the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But, my second tier here in terms of the retreads, some guys that would make some sense. Mike McCarthy, the former Cowboys head coach, he's from Pittsburgh. He understands the Steelers culture and the quote-unquote Steelers way. very successful head coach throughout his career, but if you're looking for somebody to have success in the postseason, I don't know if McCarthy's necessarily the best option in the world. He also has a lot of connections inside the National Football League, can build a good staff. Cliff Kingsbury, the Washington Commanders offensive coordinator. What I like about Cliff's offense is that it's a very easy offense for a young quarterback to come in, play right away, and have success in. We've seen that with Jaden Daniels and even Marcus Mariota. It's a more college-esque, air raidy type of system. Marcus Mariota's never had as much success in any offensive system in his pro career than he has had in this system with Cliff Kingsbury. So I would think about him. Brian Dable, like I said before, he's somebody that understands that transition with young quarterbacks from the college game to the pro game. Honestly, I think Joe Shane did a terrible job building him a roster. Now, obviously, he had a hand in that as well, but I think he's a guy that if he gets a second chance, he could potentially have some success. And then Arthur Smith, if you want to trade Mike Tomlin, Arthur Smith already has credibility inside the Steelers locker room, all those different things. And if the offense can kickstart it here at the end of the season, maybe he could be a potential name to watch out for. Certainly getting some buzz from some other teams in the National Football League right now for head coaching positions. And then some intriguing names that I probably wouldn't love, but, I would consider. Bill Belichick, obviously greatest head coach in the history of the National Football League. Certainly could use his connection to Saban to get, some of Saban's guys from Alabama and build a staff here in Pittsburgh. It's the name to watch out for, but I honestly don't think it's going to happen. John Gruden, I think that the game has kind of passed him by, and honestly, I think he's a better media personality than a coach at this point in time. Jesse Minter, really good defensive coordinator for the Chargers. I love his defensive philosophy. I'm not too sure if he's going to be able to be a head coach in the National Football League and step into Mike Tomlin's shoes from a leadership perspective, but that's a possibility. And then Aiden Durd, the defensive coordinator from Seattle, would certainly bring over the McDonald's style of defense with two high safeties, lots of safety play, interchangeable players, that sort of stuff that we're seeing all over the league. And then Clayton Adams, the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys. The Cowboys' offense is awesome with Dak Prescott and George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, and he's an offensive line guy, and he's one of the better offensive line coaches in the league. So if you're looking for somebody to develop an offensive line, Clayton Adams might be somebody to consider as well. But that's going to be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk by Chat Sports. Guys, if you are a real one, made it to the end of today's show, and you bleed black and gold, type those real ones down there in the comments section. We'll give you some love down there in the comments section if you do so. And that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk by Chat Sports. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, guys, here we go, Steelers. Second segment in the books. We're going to be getting into a third segment here, talking about 5 things the Steelers need to fix and 5 reasons to hope for this Pittsburgh Steelers team as we head down the home stretch of the 2025 NFL season. So we're going to get to that here in just a second, but we only have one segment left on today's live show, guys, before our mailbag. So time is running out to get your questions on the mailbag. Use hashtag Steelers in the chat or super chat to get on today's show. The only way to guarantee your question gets on the show today, though, is if you super chat. So we greatly appreciate all of the donations that come in. And speaking of super chats, Czar Craig coming in with a 5 says, do you think Buffalo will change their base defense set this week out of their usual nickel base to one that will better defend against our jumbo package? For their sake, they better, because if they keep going out there in nickel versus jumbo, where you've got essentially 7 offensive linemen for the Steelers, it's going to be a long day for them, plain and simply, man. So especially if they want to play 2 high safeties out of nickel, good luck, man. I think that this is a really good matchup for Pittsburgh this week, guys. I really do. Buffalo's style of defense is really built to go up against the modern-day passing game in the National Football League. And teams have certainly countered by playing heavier and playing more tight end sets and all that stuff. And the Steelers are certainly part of the group leading the charge on that in the National Football League. So Buffalo better come with some adjustments, and they better execute those adjustments really well, or else I think the Steelers' rushing attack is going to stomp on them on Sunday. But we got one more segment to get to here before our mailbag. 5 things to fix, 5 reasons to hope. Let's get into it right now. I think this is a very interesting segment here, guys. Talking about some bad, but also talking about some good. That's what we try to do here on Steelers Talk. So without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Today, I'm going to be discussing 5 things that I think the Pittsburgh Steelers need to fix down the stretch if this team wants to be dangerous come playoff time, let alone make the playoffs, and then five reasons that I still have hope for this Pittsburgh Steelers football team heading down the home stretch of the 2025 NFL season. It's going to be a fun one here today, guys. Make sure you click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. If you bleed black and gold, no matter what, if you are with this team and if you love Pittsburgh Steelers football, no matter what happens, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon, help out today's show, and show your support. All right, so we'll start with the things to fix, all right? And the first thing that I think the Steelers need to do is they need to run the football more, all right? The run game, this team was built to be a running offense. With Arthur Smith, the run game is always paramount in terms of game planning, in terms of schematics, in terms of the way the roster is constructed. But despite that, right now they are 18th in the National Football League. That is below league average in rush percentage, all right? So they're actually passing the football at an above league average level right now, and they're rushing it slightly less. And, just 42.5% of their offensive plays are rushing plays. Now, some of that is the Steelers are down in the second half. They have to pass the ball more, yada, yada, yada. But even in the situations where they absolutely can run the football more, they're not running it as much as I would like. And the reason why I would like them to run the ball more is because it's effective. This is the best thing that the Pittsburgh Steelers do this year. All right, they are 6th in EPA per rush average this season, and they are 7th in rushing success rate. And, a lot of this can be tied back to week 4 when they started using the jumbo personnel packages. And since they started using those packages, they are 4th and 5th respectively in EPA per rush average and rushing success rate. So this is a top 5 rushing offense in the National Football League in terms of pure efficiency and success. But despite that, they're rushing it at a below league average level, and you compare that to the passing metrics, and it's like, listen, man, if your passing game is really good, I have no problem passing the ball more. All right, but respectively, there you're 18th and 19th and average drop back average there on EPA, and then also passing success rate. So obviously, this team is better running the football than they are passing the football, but they're passing it way more, and it's a little frustrating to see that. And I just really hope that this team can lean even more into the run game. They did it last week against Chicago, and it was one of the best offensive performances they've had all season long, especially on the ground. I'm hoping they go into this week's game, especially against the Bills, with the same mentality and pound the frickin' rock. Then another thing that I think that the Steelers should fix heading down the stretch is that they need to stretch out the passing game, all right? And you have to target the intermediate middle and the intermediate deep middle portion of the field. And you have to target more areas of the field if you want defenses to stay honest, because right now they're not targeting downfield, they're not targeting deep, and they're not targeting over the middle of the field, okay? Like, it's a lot underneath. It's a lot towards the sidelines. It's a lot of checkdowns. It's a lot of screens. And when that happens, defensive coordinators kind of custom tailor their defensive game plans to play more aggressively to the underneath areas and to the screen game. And, they leave areas to the deeper portions of the field, especially over the middle, that are extremely vulnerable for the Steelers to attack. And they have been trying to do that. At least last week they were. Arthur Smith actually had some nice stuff over the middle of the field last week against the Bears, in my opinion. DK Metcalf on a number of deep crossers. They had Scotty Miller wide open on a dig route on one play out of a bunch. They had, some legitimate options over the middle of the field last week. It's just that Mason Rudolph decided not to throw there. Now, maybe that's just a part of the progression. I don't know. But Mason had a number of opportunities to throw over the middle last week's game, and he just didn't do it. He opted to throw towards the sideline. Pittsburgh does have the speed to make this happen. They can absolutely attack the middle of the field. You can run Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson and DK Metcalf on deep posts. I mean, how many times have the Steelers thrown a deep post this season? Maybe once, maybe twice. Like, that should be one of the main things and one of the main routes that the Steelers try to get going to try and get these deep shots, because you got game wreckers here in terms of the speed, in terms of the verticality that these three bring to the table. They all run in the 4-3s, yet we're running them on curls, and we're running quick game concepts that don't really serve this offense. And what would really serve this offense is getting them over the middle, get them ahead of steam, get them running, get them out in space. and get these guys running away from defenders instead of catching it and then going out of bounds or catching it and getting tackled. And if Pittsburgh can unlock this, guys, and they can unlock that vertical passing game down the stretch, I think that this offense could really catch fire. I really do, because not only do teams have to worry about the vertical passing game then and the over-the-middle passing game then, but they also have to worry about the sidelines, and they also have to worry about the yak game that has really worked well for the Steelers this year, and they have to worry about the screen game too. You just got to give defenses more stuff to worry about. And, in my opinion, guys, explosiveness is better than efficiency. I mean, just think about it. What's better? A 60-yard completion completely flipping the field, or what's more likely, I should say, and what's better in terms of efficiency, that 60-yard play or like 6 first downs where you get 11 yards on each set of downs? Like, you can make an argument for efficiency because of time of possession and wearing down a defense, but if you want to consistently score a lot of points in this league, you have to be explosive. You have to get those explosive plays down the field. The Steelers don't do that, so they have to pretty much play perfectly on a drive. They can't make any mistakes or else the drive is over. And I would much rather, decrease the margin for error there and get some explosive chunks down the field to allow this team to score more points. Then another thing that this team needs to fix is they need to get Jonnu Smith off the freaking field. I mean, now I'm not saying completely bench him, never play him, but he should easily be getting, the third most snaps at the tight end position, especially in comparison to Darnell Washington and Pat Freiermuth, who are clearly better players. You guys can take a look here. In terms of the pass-catching snap share among the top weapons in this passing game, Jonnu Smith currently has the third most snaps, only behind DK Metcalf and Darnell Washington, okay? Calvin Austin III, Pat Freiermuth, Roman Wilson. All three guys are better receiving weapons, in my opinion, have less snaps than Jonnu Smith. And then you guys can take a look at the receiving yards. Despite that huge disparity in snaps and targets between Jonnu Smith and Roman Wilson, Roman is right on his tail in terms of total receiving yards. Jonnu is one of the least efficient pass-catching weapons in the game, yet he is getting, full-time starter workload in this offense, and it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, Pat Freiermuth has the 5th most snaps out of these 6 players. He has the 2nd most receiving yards. That should be a sign to Arthur Smith. Get this guy on the field more. Get him the football more. And especially when you got a guy in Jonnu Smith, and it'd be one thing if Jonnu was playing well, but he's not, man. He doesn't really do anything. He doesn't block well. He doesn't run good routes. He doesn't really catch the ball at a great level in terms of contested catches. Like, he doesn't really even do the yak stuff all that well. He gets like 3 or 4 yards per catch on a screen. It's just not good, explosive, efficient football to keep feeding Jonnu Smith and keep putting him out on the field to the expense of Calvin Austin III, at the expense of Roman Wilson, at the expense of Pat Freiermuth. These guys are better players than Jonnu Smith, so they should play more than him, period. Now, another thing that they should fix, now shifting to the defensive side of the ball, is they should go back to playing a too-high base defense. This is what they've been doing the 3 weeks prior to the Bears game, and then Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin, because of the Bears' rushing attack, decided to go back to a heavy one-high defensive structure against the Bears, and you guys saw the result. I mean, it was the worst defensive performance the Steelers have had over the last month, and it wasn't even close. And, I can't stress enough how important pre-snap ambiguity is for this Steelers defense, because this pass rush is legitimately awesome, all right? Their time to pressure this year, it's the highest in the National Football League. But if the quarterback is getting rid of it within 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds very consistently, and that pass rush has no time to get home, they're not going to get home, all right? So you got to force these quarterbacks to hold the ball for longer. The guys that have had the most success against this defense, Caleb Williams, Jordan Love, Joe Flacco, Sam Darnold, they all got the ball out extremely quickly against the Steelers defense, and they got the ball down the field while doing so as well. So this defense needs to do a better job hiding what their coverage is pre-snap. The way to do that is you put Jalen Ramsey and Kyle Duggar in those kind of quarters alignment, too high safety type of base defense. And, these two guys, they're long, they're physical, they're athletic. They can, get down there and help in the run defense, and that's part of the reason why you go get a Kyle Duggar, so you can run this defense and run this style of defense more efficiently. And frankly, Ramsey and Duggar are just way more comfortable playing that too high structure pre-snap than in that single high structure. So I think that that's just the best way moving forward, and hopefully Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin learned that lesson in Chicago last week. Then the final thing to fix is to get more discipline out of the linebackers, and in particular, Patrick Queen. Peyton Wilson has certainly had his moments this year, and, every once in a while, and pretty much in every game, there'll be a couple plays where he's out of position. He doesn't have the best zone feel and pass coverage either. He's a hell of an athlete. He's shown some good stuff this year for sure. He's growing as a player. But Patrick Queen, man, he's out of position a lot in the run game. He's miscommunicating things to the defense. He's the quarterback of the team. He's got that green dot. And if you want to look at and you want to point fingers to the person that's not communicating to the defense and for all these miscommunications and all these different things that are happening to the Steelers defense this year, and frankly, it goes back to last year at this point, it's Patrick Queen who's in charge of the defensive calls on this defense. And he also leads the league, by the way, among linebackers in missed tackle rate. Peyton Wilson's missed tackle rate's like 10%. Just for reference, Patrick Queen's is 20. That is first in the National Football League. It's by far the highest, and it's just unacceptable for somebody that gets paid as much as he gets paid. He has the green dot. He has a lot of responsibility, and frankly, he's a liability on this Steelers defense. Got to get more consistency out of him if the Steelers defense is going to turn it around before the end of the year. Now, up next here on Steelers Talk, 5 reasons to still have hope. I just gave you 5 things the Steelers need to fix down the stretch. Now, and then coming up here, I'm going to give you 5 reasons to have hope that they will actually fix those things in the coming weeks. Now, let me know down there in the comment section, what is the number one thing that the Pittsburgh Steelers need to fix down the stretch? Let me know your opinion down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. Just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our new sponsor here on Steelers Talk, Cash App. And while I tell you about our new sponsor today, answer this question down there in the comments. Here on Steelers Talk, we are thrilled to be partnering with our new sponsor here on the show, Cash App. And the holidays are all about finding the perfect gift, but this time of the year, not every deal is actually what it seems. Scammers are getting more creative to trick people into sharing their payment info through methods like fake shopping sites and giveaways that are too good to be true. Luckily, Cash App's 24/7 fraud monitoring helps detect and alert you for unusual card activity if someone were to gain access to your card, so you can act fast if something seems off. You can also lock or unlock your Cash App card instantly right in the app for extra control and peace of mind. Stay one step ahead of scams this season and keep your money secure with Cash App. For limited time only, new Cash App customers can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash. For real, just download Cash App, use our exclusive referral code, SECURE10 in your profile. Send $5 to a friend within 14 days, and you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partners. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank. Member FDIC. Promotions provided by Cash App, a Block Inc. brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures. And a big thank you to Cash App for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. So I'll start my list of reasons to hope for the Pittsburgh Steelers down the stretch here with the fact that the talent, I believe, is here. Okay, I do believe that this roster is the most complete roster that the Pittsburgh Steelers have put together probably since 2017. Now, I don't think it's as good as that 2017 season where, fortunately, they did lose at home to the Jacksonville Jaguars there at the end of the Killer Bee era. But I do think that with Aaron Rodgers, who is not going to be afraid of that big playoff stage if and when the Steelers get there, got so much veteran talent on this team that is capable of playing at a high level. And that's another reason to hope here, guys, is that we have seen both sides of the ball, offense and defense, play at a high level this year. All right, we've seen Aaron Rodgers play at a high level this year to the point where people are talking about at midway through the season that the Steelers have to bring him back next season. Right, and obviously it's subsided since then, ever since he jammed his finger against the Indianapolis Colts back in Week 9, and then you have Mason Rudolph this past week, all that different stuff. But we've seen this offense play well. We've seen this defense play well, all right? Outside of that Chicago game last week, they've had a 3-game stretch there where they were playing some pretty darn good football. It's just about putting it all together at this point. We've seen the potential on both sides of the ball. If they can get hot and they can find some consistency and they can have the offense and the defense play complementary football down the stretch, this team can absolutely be dangerous. And there's also the reality that, Mike Tomlin voodoo, whatever you want to call it, it's on our side, all right? And, whatever you want to call it, but Mike Tomlin just has a knack for getting this team to be competitive at the end of the season and put them in position to make the postseason, all right? So even though we've lost 4 of our last 6, things don't look great, I've seen a Mike Tomlin season, guys, where after a 3-7 start, this team still got to a winning record and nearly made the playoffs, all right? So there's something about Mike Tomlin-led teams that even when things aren't going great, he's able to galvanize the group, get them to play motivated football, and turn things around. So right now you're sitting at 6-5. Okay, and there's still plenty of time to turn things around. And, history would certainly suggest that the Steelers at least go 500 the rest of the way and get to 9-8. Now, I understand 9-8 is not good enough, all right? I understand that is not a good outcome for the Pittsburgh Steelers because you likely don't make the playoffs with a 9-8 record, and that is about as mediocre as it gets. All right, but I think they win at least 3, and I think, the 3 games that I feel pretty good about at this point. Now, obviously, you can't count your chickens before they hatch, but we're going to go through this exercise. They absolutely should beat the Miami Dolphins, a soft team that doesn't like to play in the cold, in Pittsburgh in Week 15, in a night situation, by the way. It's going to be cold in Pittsburgh that night. Then Week 17 at Cleveland, should be able to win that game as well, with probably Shadur Sanders starting. Mike Tomlin's record against rookie quarterbacks is excellent. And then also, you just got to win one game against Baltimore. That gets you to 3 wins. And I think that, beating Baltimore in one of those games is absolutely reasonable. Lamar Jackson and that Ravens offense is not playing at a high level right now, and I certainly think that the track record of the Steelers defense going up against Lamar Jackson has been pretty favorable in terms of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think it's reasonable to think the Steelers will win at least one game against the Baltimore Ravens this year, and that gets you to 3 wins, which means you would need one more win over the last 3 games that we haven't talked about yet to get you to double-digit wins and likely to the NFL postseason. So you're going to have to beat either Buffalo this week, the Lions on the road in Week 16, or you're going to have to sweep the Baltimore Ravens. Now, you might be saying at home, Jack, I don't think they're going to do that, and especially because, the Steelers just lost to the Bears. But I actually think that the Steelers' matchup versus the Bills is very good. The one weakness the Bills' offense has is that they're not great against the blitz, and they also turn the football over a lot. Steelers have an excellent pass rush, and they turn the football over. I think it's a great matchup for the Steelers defense. And then on the other side of the ball, what do the Steelers do really well? Run the football from jumbo personnel. What do the Bills do really poorly? Defend the run, especially teams that run from jumbo personnel. So I think that this is a really good matchup for the Steelers. I think it's very realistic that they could win this game. But I also think it's somewhat realistic they could sweep the Baltimore Ravens, all right? Like, I know the Ravens are a good football team. They've won a bunch of games in a row, but they haven't played anybody in a while now. And the Steelers swept the Baltimore Ravens with Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph at quarterback one year. You're telling me that they can't sweep them this year if Aaron Rodgers and this offense figure it out, if the defense is playing good football down the stretch? I certainly think that's possible. Now, if you win one of those 3 games, you get to 10-7. If you can win 2 of them, which I do think is possible, you get to 11-6, which would certainly win the division. So I still think that the Steelers have everything left in front of them. And my prediction actually is that the Pittsburgh Steelers will finish the year 10-7. All right, the same place that you were, the last 2 seasons, obviously. But 10-7 gets you into the postseason, gets you into the dance. And if you can beat Baltimore, in that season finale, 10-7 almost certainly wins you the division and gets you a home playoff game, which increases the chances of a win in the playoffs. So this is the year that I actually think 10-7 could be good enough to put this team in position to win a playoff game this year. That hasn't been the case the last 2 years. This year, my prediction is the Steelers win 4 of their last 6, get to 10-7, and make it to the postseason. Also, I think the AFC North as a division is very winnable. All right, I understand how the momentum looks. I mean, the Steelers were 4-1. The Ravens were 1-5 at one point. It looked really bad for Baltimore. And now, boom, 5 straight wins for Baltimore. Pittsburgh has lost 4 of their last 6, and you've completely choked away the lead at this point in the season. I understand that the momentum makes it seem like Baltimore's just going to run away with this division from here on out. But something you guys got to realize is that Baltimore's schedule just came off the easiest stretch they're going to have the entire year, and they don't have any more games where you really feel like they're for sure going to win, all right? Like, they've got a pretty tough schedule these last 6 weeks. They've got Joe Burrow coming back for the Bengals to play them twice in 3 weeks. There's at least a chance the Bengals could at least upset them once in those 2 games. And they have to play the Steelers twice. Obviously, those games are going to loom large in the division race. And then outside of the division games, you have to play the New England freaking Patriots in Week 16 and then the Green Bay Packers on the road in Week 17. This is a tough finish to the schedule, guys. And it honestly wouldn't shock me if Baltimore lost 4 of their final 6 games down this stretch, which would almost certainly lock up the division for the Pittsburgh Steelers, even if they get 9 wins at the end of the year. But I do think that, it's probably going to come down to the final game, guys. It's just the way that it works, right? Steelers, Ravens, it just always seems to come down to that final week, season finale type of game to decide the winner of this division. I think that's the way it's going to go. And, it's even possible that the loser of that game will be out of the playoffs entirely. So that might be an early playoff game for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and my guess is it'll probably be played at night. So it's going to be a lot of fun here to finish up the rest of the season. But no, although the Ravens have caught up to us, this race is just getting started, and I absolutely think the Pittsburgh Steelers can still win the AFC North here in 2025. So who wins the North? Let me know what you guys think. Down there in the comment section, type PIT for Steelers or BAL for the Baltimore Ravens. Let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section. For me, I'm going to stay strong here. I'm going to continue to say the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then the final reason to hope here, guys, in my opinion, is that the AFC is still wide freaking open, all right? Like, you look at the teams that are in the playoff picture for the AFC right now. Tell me which teams the Steelers definitely can't beat. They already beat Drake May and the New England Patriots on the road, all right? They beat Daniel Jones and the Colts at home, all right? They've already beaten 2 division winners right now in the AFC, and if they beat Baltimore, I think they'll beat them at least once. That means they would have beaten 3 of these teams, okay? And then the Broncos, they got a really good defense, but Bo Nix is so up and down. The Chargers, you don't have Joe Alt, don't have Rashawn Slater. I think that team is very beatable. Same thing goes for Jacksonville. I think the Steelers match up very favorably to the Buffalo Bills as well. So I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are capable of beating any team that they play in a playoff scenario. They just have to put it all together. Like we talked about earlier in today's show, the offense and the defense need to come together. You got to strip these inconsistencies that we've seen throughout this season. And my message to you, as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and I know it's been tough over this last month and a half where this team has lost 4 of their last 6 games. I understand it's been extremely frustrating being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan here over the last several weeks. But, and obviously things need to get better down the stretch, but everything is still in front of this football team. They still have every opportunity, not only to make the playoffs, not only to win the division, but also to go on a run in the playoffs. They've already proven that they can beat some of the top teams in this conference if they play to the level that they're capable of. It's just a matter of getting there more consistently and put together a great stretch in January of your best football to be able to deliver this team its first playoff win and hopefully multiple playoff wins in many seasons. Now, that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk. I hope I convinced you guys to have a little bit of hope for the Pittsburgh Steelers here heading down the home stretch, but I also gave you guys some reasons and some things to fix as well. If you guys love the Pittsburgh Steelers and you're a real one, you watch all of our shows, all that great stuff, let me know down there in the comments section by typing real one down there in the comments. We'll give you guys some love if you do so. Appreciate all of your guys' support. Make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. We're going to have more Steelers content coming your way here throughout this week. And when you click that subscribe button, guys, you get access to all of our videos. We're going to be going live on Sunday for the Bills game starting at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time for our live watch party. It's all going to be great, guys. So if you want all of our content for free, make sure you click that subscribe button. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers. All right, we got one more segment to go here, folks, and it is the mailbag. I'm guessing we have enough questions, Ponzi. All right, so what's that? All right, cool. So we're going to get into this mailbag here probably within the next minute. We still got over 300 people watching live. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show, talking some Steelers football with us here, man. There's been a lot of fun things to talk about today. A lot of Mike Tomlin speculation, some injury updates, talking about some Mike Tomlin replacements. I'm sure you guys got a lot of good questions for me here on today's mailbag. All right, and Ponzi's just getting our mailbag graphics ready here, guys. So I want to give a big shout-out to Eugene Payne, DJ KJ. Seahawks fan 2005 is here. Shout-out to Seahawks fan. Obviously we're a Steelers channel, but, I guess if you want to come just talk some football with us, we appreciate you, Seahawks fan. We got Jermaine White, Sack Kala, Truth Thong. Crazy name right there, by the way. And we're going to end it on that one there, Ponzi. We're going to get into our mailbag right here. Your questions coming up right now here on Steelers Talk Live. It's my favorite segment of the week. It is the Steelers Talk Mailbag here in Week 13. The Pittsburgh Steelers are about to take on the Buffalo Bills at home here in Week 13 in a big playoff caliber matchup. But before we get into your questions today, I just want to thank you guys for all the people that have subscribed to the channel, that support our show. But also, if you want to join this community of over 105,000 Steelers fans that have already clicked that subscribe button, click that subscribe button now for our daily content. We put out 2 videos every single day on this channel. We also go live for every single Steelers game, and we try and keep this channel as interactive as possible. We have daily community posts and polls. Of course, you guys get crazy with your takes down there in the comment section. We also go live twice a week during the week to talk about the Steelers and all the latest news and rumors. And, of course, we go live for every single Steelers game as well, where we react to the game together. So if you guys want to join a community of people that bleed black and gold, that want daily content, and that suits your needs here on YouTube, make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Let's get into the questions here, starting with my man, Mike Nintendo Master, who says, is it time to consider a coaching change in Pittsburgh? Now, Mike, my philosophy on approaching a potential coaching change here in Pittsburgh is you're going to give it to the end of the year. And if this team doesn't make the playoffs, if they are below 500, et cetera, and it's just a very disappointing end to the year, if Tomlin loses the locker room, for example, and it's just very clearly time to move on, then yeah, you explore trade options. You explore maybe Tomlin stepping away from football or retiring for a year, and bringing in somebody new because, plain simply, guys, it's been almost a decade now since Mike Tomlin's won a playoff game. He's been to the playoffs plenty of times. He just always loses in the first round, and this team is always competitive, and it's always, somewhat good, but it's pretty mediocre, and it's pretty clear by the time we make it to the playoffs that, we're not on the same level as the legitimate Super Bowl contenders. And, once you get to almost a decade of that being the case, you have to start pointing at the guy at the top at some point. So we'll see what ends up happening. It's still very possible. In fact, I'm predicting that the Steelers will win double-digit wins this year, and they'll get into the playoffs and maybe even win the division, and they'll have a chance to get a playoff win. And if they do that, obviously you're bringing back Mike Tomlin. So it's at 6-5, still a lot of football left to be played. It's no time to be making sweeping declarations at this point in terms of what the Steelers need to do at head coach next year. I'm going to let the season play out, and then I'll come up with my take. Then we get to Yami with a 5, says, do you think coaching changes happens regardless of this season? Previous Steelers are criticizing the schematics. Essex and Harrison are examples. I will say this. What if they win the Super Bowl? Let's just run that scenario, all right? Are they going to change the coaches? No. So, when you say regardless of this season, I have to answer no, because if they go to the playoffs, if they have 10 wins, I really have a hard time believing that they're going to fire Mike Tomlin. But something that they might do is they might replace Terrell Austin. That's a possibility. I believe Austin's contract is up at the end of this season, so it's very possible they could just go out and find a new defensive coordinator, which I think would be helpful. But certainly I don't think that they're going to get rid of Tomlin no matter what happens this season or anything like that. Harrison, I'm actually not sure if James watches the film. I think he watches the games, and he's very reactionary like we are. I don't think Harrison's actually sitting down and watching the film. I know Trey, sits down and watches the film, and I agree with a lot of things that he's been saying, especially this past week. The defensive schematics were bad for Pittsburgh this past week, going back to a single high system. But that's not the defense that they've been playing, for the most part over the last month. They've been playing a lot of two high safety stuff over the last month, and then they went back to playing a lot of single high stuff that was not working at all at the beginning of the season, and it was a very similar result to the beginning of the season. So hopefully Austin and Tomlin kind of wise up and go back to, the quarters and the two high safety system that we saw them deploy in recent weeks, because this defense played very well when they played that. So we'll just have to see how the season unfolds here, Yami, but we're just going to have to see what they do. $5 from Interstellar Reaper says, do you think Notre Dame's head coach Marcus Freeman could replace Tomlin as head coach, or will the Steelers hire someone inside the organization? I don't think they would hire someone from within the organization unless it's maybe Arthur Smith. Like if players are really adamant that they want Art as the next head coach, then maybe they consider him. If the offense plays really well down the stretch, maybe they consider him. But to answer your question about Freeman, I don't love the idea of bringing in college coaches that don't have any connections to the NFL game. And Freeman, is a team builder. He's a good leader of men. All that's great. But I think something that goes underrated in these head coaching hires, guys, is what kind of staff can you build? What do your offensive and defensive coordinators look like? And for a guy like Marcus Freeman, who's not going to be calling plays as a head coach in the NFL, he's going to have really good coordinators. And I just don't know if he has those connections. And that goes for like Dan Lanning from Oregon, for example, and the other guys that would be coming over from the college game. So personally, the answer is no. I think I'd rather go and get somebody from the NFL ranks or somebody that's at least very familiar with the NFL ranks and strategy, and because it's a completely different game, guys. The hash marks being wider in college completely changed strategy, completely changed spacing. It's a completely different game, college to pro. So I don't know if I want somebody with not a lot of NFL experience coming in and coaching this team. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Should the Steelers move on from Mike Tomlin? Simply give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. Just a second here. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here. When that happens, take advantage of that time by giving me a yes or a no down there in the comments. $10 from Steelers Dad says, just wanted to say how much I appreciate your coverage. There is literally no other source of Steelers content like Chat Sports. I appreciate that, Steelers Dad. We try to give you guys the best Steelers coverage that we can. We have late nights, we have early mornings to get you guys this coverage, 2 videos a day, plus our live coverage. And, of course, we have to watch film as well as do all the graphics. And it's just a lot of work, but you guys make it worth it, 100%, man. I'm the luckiest guy in the world to be able to talk Steelers football with you guys every single day, so I appreciate that message there, Steelers Dad. JV Free says Steelers defense got the ball back twice to tie or win. The loss is on Rudolph. I have to agree with this. Like, the defense didn't play perfectly by any stretch of the imagination, but when you have the ball twice within, the final 5 minutes of the game or whatever it was, and by the way, you had a wide open Roman Wilson down the field for a game-winning touchdown and you miss him, the game is kind of on the quarterback, guys. I'm sorry. That would be the number one reason. Now, the defense certainly played their part. If the defense just plays better, Rudy's not even in that position, right? And, if Kyle Duggar catches that interception that he dropped at the end of the first half, it's a tie ball game. And you don't lose the game. You go to overtime instead. So, I do put Rudolph at the highest point of the pyramid for the loss last week. But it's not an easy situation. As a backup quarterback that hasn't had a lot of reps with the guys on the field, it's not an easy situation to step into, but I do feel like if you have better quarterback play, you win that football game. Cheeseball comes in here with one, says, did you see the report that an NFL insider reported a long-time NFL head coach is interested in a change of scenery? This is actually, yes, I did see this. This is actually Josina Anderson, who's got connections to Mike Tomlin, by the way. She kind of had some inline road to kind of what the Steelers were going to do this offseason. I think the wording she used this offseason was some very interesting changes coming in Pittsburgh this offseason, and boy, was that the case, man. Trading for DK Metcalf, getting rid of George Pickens, bringing in Aaron Rodgers, trading for Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith. There's definitely some interesting changes, so she was right on that. And she does have connections to Tomlin, and this was the exact tweet. We found it here. It says, meanwhile, there's a long-time NFL head coach out there who is considering wanting a change of scenery and has told others of these thoughts. If he acts on those lingering feelings, his departure would clearly add to the list of vacancies. So a lot of people think that this is either John Harbaugh of the Ravens or Mike Tomlin of the Steelers. But honestly, with Josina's connections to Tomlin and the Steelers, I kind of think it is Mike Tomlin, but I guess we'll just have to see how the season plays out, and if it doesn't end well, I'm certainly open to trading Mike Tomlin at the end of this season. We'll just have to see what that looks like. All right, before we get into the rest of your questions this week, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Prize Picks, and it is officially the holiday season, my friends. And in my opinion, there is no better time of the calendar year to be a sports fan. Bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes, it's all happening all at once. And while all that action is going on, there's just one place where it feels so good to be right, and that is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is super simple to play. Just pick more than or less than on at least 2 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. My favorite feature about Prize Picks is how you play is up to you. If you want a little bit more flexibility, you can choose the flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you're really feeling strong about your lineup and you want bigger payouts for it, go for the power play. No matter how you play, though, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test and make some money. That is, if you know ball. This weekend, Ponzi and I are taking the more on touchdowns for DK Metcalf and the more on passing yards for Josh Allen when the Steelers take on the Bills this weekend. But if you guys want to get on the action here before Thanksgiving, before this weekend's professional football and collegiate football action, you guys can download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on the Prize Picks app today. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Next question here from TJKJ with me on the profile pic there. It says, what if we get John Gruden since he saw something in Will Howard? Also, if we don't, what would be the best head coach to QB we could trade for? This is a good question, DJKJ. Now, John, I think he's kind of a coach that's kind of, the game has kind of passed him by a little bit. Even when he was with the Raiders a couple of years ago, he was, behind the 8 ball when it comes to offensive schematics in comparison to guys like Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. And he's definitely not the most innovative offensive mind in the world. I think he's a good, I think he's one of the most charismatic people ever. I mean, he would absolutely fill Mike Tomlin's shoes in the locker room and in the meeting room, but players would play hard for him. But I would wonder about the staff that he would assemble in Pittsburgh. And if you want to go forward with Will Howard as your starting quarterback, maybe John Gruden, a guy that really believes in him, would be the right guy for that job. But honestly, I don't know if Will Howard's the right guy for the job, all right? Like, he had some accuracy issues. In fact, a lot of accuracy issues at Ohio State. His final year there. Now, I know what you're saying. He led the country in completion percentage, but a lot of that was screens and a lot of that was RPOs, and he was playing with incredible talent. When he was actually asked to make big boy throws down the field, there was very consistent accuracy issues from Howard on his film, and he played really well down the stretch in the college football playoff, and that deserves some credit, and I'm on record saying I think Will Howard has NFL starter upside. He also brings great size and some nice mobility to the table, some nice power as a rusher as well. So he's not completely worthless, and he's not terrible necessarily, but he's a 6th-round pick. There's a reason why, every single team in the league passed on him for, as long as they did. I'm rooting for Will. I really am. But if the Steelers have an opportunity to get a really talented guy early in the draft next year, I'd probably pull the trigger on that. But that's just me. So make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. If you are a real one, the real ones know clicking that thumbs up icon and liking today's show is the fastest and easiest way to help out our channel. It tells the YouTube algorithm that you enjoy our content and that they should recommend it to other Steelers fans like yourself. So we greatly appreciate everybody that likes the videos. Then we get to JT Clover. It says, can the Steelers make the playoffs without winning the division? Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's say the Ravens completely go ramshot the rest of the way. Maybe maybe they go 6-0. Let's say, but let's say the Steelers win their other 4 games and they are still sitting at 10-7, and they beat the Bills in the process. Right? That would be a part of that scenario. You would have the tiebreaker over the Bills in that potential scenario. And, they have tiebreakers theoretically against a number of teams. Now, I think that the Colts and Patriots are probably going to be division winners, so tiebreakers won't really matter there. But certainly 10 wins could get you into the playoffs if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's certainly a scenario where you could be a wild card, but I would say the most likely way the Steelers make the playoffs, JT, is if they win the division. But first you got to get to 10 wins, man. That's got to be – it's got to be the priority. Got to win 4 of your last 6 if you want to put yourself in legitimate contention come playoff time. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. Can the Steelers make the playoffs without winning the AFC North? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. I think it's possible, but I do think that the best path to the playoffs is to win the division at this point. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are down there in the comments. And that'll be it for this week's Steelers Talk Mailbag. Great questions once again this week, guys. We'll be back next week with another Steelers Talk Mailbag. And again, on Sunday here, we'll be live for Steelers versus Bills starting at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. about an hour of pregame coverage. Then we got live play-by-play and analysis of the game itself. Then we got postgame coverage as well. So make sure you click that subscribe button. Join the over 100,000 Yinzers already a part of our family. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers. Got some super chats here to catch up on. How many? Just 2? Okay. After this one. Okay, so we're going to wrap up the show here pretty quickly, but we'll cover these. JV Free says AFC teams are flawed, peak at the right time, win 100%. And the Steelers can absolutely get there if they can find some way. And they do have the talent to do this, by the way. They have a lot of speed at the wide receiver position. They have to use it, all right, to get more, downfield shots, to get more vertical in the passing game. That's going to be very, very important for this team down the stretch, in my opinion. And a lot of these AFC teams are flawed. They are. I mean, there's not really a team that I think the Steelers can't beat in the AFC, and that includes the Baltimore Ravens, by the way. So, we'll see what ends up happening. They have to fix some things for sure. That's obvious with losing 4 of your last 6, but I do think that those are very, what's the word I'm looking for here, Ponzi? Very realistic. It's a realistic possibility that they make those fixes, in my opinion. $2 from Shannon says, will Asante Samuel Jr. see the field Sunday? It might depend on if Joey Porter Jr. can go. Because if Joey can't go, then I think it makes sense to maybe elevate Asante so you don't have to play Darius Slay on the outside. Certainly that would be my preference. Now, he has to be in shape. He has to know all the communication that he needs to know to be out there and play at a high level. But he's a pro, and, frankly, he's better than Darius Slay at this point. I have a hard time believing he's not. So we'll see about Joey's status. James Pierre, I do expect to be a full-time starter this week, no matter what happens with Joey. But if Joey can't go, I would say watch out for ASJ. $5 from Dominic says, best case scenario is Tomlin trade. Artie is fine starting as OC. Flores hired as head coach and gets his own staff. Well, I mean, if you're keeping Artie, that's not his own staff, right? Says he can't find his own rookie QB, or he can find a rookie QB with a trade. It's possible, certainly. I will say, if Flores is being brought in here, I would be intrigued to see if they can bring in somebody from KOC's tree in Minnesota, like a Josh McCown, for example. We'll see what ends up happening there. And if Art does a good job down the stretch, then I'm open to keeping him for sure. But like I keep saying, guys, I think everybody wants to make a sweeping declaration on what they should do at head coach right now at just 11 games into the season. And it's like we get a 17-game schedule and playoffs. So let's see how it unfolds. That's my philosophy at this point. All right, man. Well, we're going to say goodbye for the show here, guys. I really do appreciate all of your guys' support. On Sunday, we will be live at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time for Steelers versus Bills. Aaron Rodgers makes his return. It's in Pittsburgh. I think this is a very actually favorable matchup, and as long as Josh Allen doesn't just completely carry the Bills to victory, which is a possibility, but I do like the matchup on paper for the Steelers. I think that this has an opportunity to be the game that turns the Steelers season around for good. I'm really excited to watch this game on Sunday, guys. If you're with me on that, make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. From me and Ponzi, we appreciate all of your guys' support. We'll have more Steelers content throughout the week. Just so you guys know, we will not be live again until Sunday, all right? I'm going home for Thanksgiving, so I won't be in studio on Thursday, and frankly, I won't be on Wednesday or Friday either, so I'm taking the rest of the week off. But I'll still get you guys content on this channel, 2 videos a day, because that's my commitment to you guys. But I really do appreciate all the love and support. I will see you guys next time. And until then, here we go, Steelers.